Hello, so in this session we're going to talk about nations and states with a focus on the Kurds in Iraq and their ethnic challenges since the 20th century, I could say, until now. So the issue of nationality is complicated. We're going to address nationality, states, why is it complicated, in what sense is it imaginary, what can a nation be. Nationality and citizenship, they can be two complicated issues. A seemingly simple question about nationality might lead to a number of different perspectives and ideas on the issue. For example, somebody who's from UK can say that I'm British. Well, inside UK we have 4 other states or regions. They can, for example, call themselves English, Scottish, Irish, Wales. For example, we have the number of Polish people in the country. They can be Polish British, Arab, like Iraqi British, Kurdish British, and all of these. That's why the issue of nationality is really a complicated issue, because they're known for something, they have an identity in the international community, but they recognize themselves to have another identity. So defining nationality relates to the idea of political identity. Nationalism is an ideology, like we indicated in the previous session, and to the idea of belonging to a particular nation and to a particular state. It causes many wars. Disputes about nationality, self-determination, and statehood have caused many wars throughout the history. And of course, this includes the 2 destructive world wars that happened in Europe that results in the casualties of tens of millions of people. Because World War I and World War II basically started with the ideology of nationalism. There was a competition over territory, there was hate, and we know that nationalism itself, the idea of nationalism, appeared in 19th century, and it was from this that appeared the nation states, and nations tried to become state. In the post-Cold War period, there have been many wars and violent conflicts in the Balkans, for example, in Chechnya, East Timor, and parts of Africa like Ethiopia and Eritrea, in which questions of statehood and nationalism have been central causes. So nationalism, the idea of nation-state, nations can be the main cause of war, and the players are the political leaders, human beings, and soldiers. Knowledge of nationhood, states, and sovereignty is vital for students of international relations, because without that we can't answer the questions about why wars are happening and about the origins of war. Let's see what's a nation. For a nationalist, a nation can be a collective group of people who share a number of common social, cultural, and ethnic characteristics. Behind the idea of nation is us and the other, which is the cause behind the lack of unity. And of course, when there is not unity, there will be war. These characteristics include language, tradition, ethnicity, religion, myths, beliefs, whatever, history, whatever that unites a particular nation. But the idea is more complicated than that, and we're gonna address it in the next few slides. This group identity can be reinforced by shared experiences like war, famine, persecution, indicating that the nation is an enduring community of people with a sense of a shared past and a shared future. The political leader says that we have gone through that, we are like that, we are one people, we are that, we are that. Mobilizing the people to fight for war, to fight for their own homeland and nation whenever needed. And of course, there is motivation behind that. Like, you are my people, we are one family, and we need to fight for our own cause. That's the interesting part that I want to talk about, because what the political leader says, what the military leader says, and what the president says, that you are a nation, you are part of me, it's something imaginary. And that's what students need to know. Very important. We have a number of stuff that are imaginary in the world. Nationality, nation, different gender roles, and a lot of things can be social constructs. This comes from the constructivism idea, that things are made by human beings. And actually, this includes that as well, because it's believed that nationality is something that's a social construct, that's human beings made it. In this sense, it's a social phenomenon that differentiates different people in the world. So Anderson suggests the idea of nation as being an imagined community, something just imaginary, wherein the nation is a social construct rather than a naturally occurring social phenomenon. So, of course, modernity played a role behind the idea of the nation. The idea of the nation is born out of modernity, Industrial Revolution, and was created by a number of interrelated factors, including the evolution of the printing press, industrialization, urbanization, the Reformation carried as well in France, USA, for example, and other places, the increasing role of the state too. The idea here is to say that modernity was something that introduced the idea of nationalism, of the nation, of the state, that we are one people. You, like this village, this city from the other part of the world, or from the other part of the country, we are informing you that you are part of us, we need to protect our territory, our sovereignty is important, all of that. So those factors that I indicated played a role behind the creation of the nation, behind the awareness, the spirit of awareness. The development of the national consciousness of the nations across Europe was complex. And it took some time and was substantially helped by the development of the mass communications like the books and newspapers and the other factors like I indicated. So it was not, the development of national awareness or consciousness was not made in a matter of days. It took some time until it was introduced. Here, here we have something to talk about, and that the creation of the nation, the creation of the state united the nations. And that has to do with the imagined community ideology like I talked about, and that has to do with unity and sovereignty. And we know that behind every state lies sovereignty. There must be sovereignty. Without sovereignty, the state cannot be called a state. Jim Bowden, Thomas Hobbes, and many other philosophers talked about the importance of sovereignty. The state builds the nation rather than the nation creating the state. In the age of nationalism, just like I talked about, in 19th century, it was the age of nationalism, the idea of the nation and nationhood became increasingly important and led to the unification of Italy. As an example, because it was not set in Italy. In 1861 in Germany, in 1871, those became states in those periods. Germany, for example, were hundreds of tens of states and small regions and kingdoms, but now it is one single state. And of course, same goes for Poland, Italy, and other states. And this can, for example, probably be an advantage behind the wars that it caused. It can be an advantage of the creation of the nation state and the ideology of nationalism. The cultural, linguistic, and ethnic homogeneity of Italians saw Italy emerge as a single nation state. Whereas before 1861, it was a collection of smaller Italian and papal states. This is what we mean that nation and state unified Italy, this idea. But of course, it can be imaginary in the sense that in 1801, there were 125 German states or kingdoms and regions occupying the territory we know now and call Germany. So that's why, it was Germany in this period in 1801. All these were Germany, but then people came, theorists came, political leaders came. They said, well, why don't we just design them, collect them together, we give them sovereignty, and we call them Germany. That's what we mean that it's an imagined idea. Political mechanisms like war, a revolution based upon the idea of national unity brought together the German people and Italian people to create the German state and the Italian state. This means that the creation of the state causes wars. And this is still going on. In Kurdistan, for example, the Kurds are fighting and they have often fought the series of Iraqi governments. They made a referendum in 2017 to create their own state, which backfired. Catalonia, for example, made a referendum as well in Spain to have their own, and many other ones as well. Still, the ethnic conflicts are going on for the creation of of the state. It's really complicated. So there are a number of stuff that creates a nation. For example, for the American nation, they base themselves on the ideals of the US Constitution and the ideas of liberty, freedom, democracy, and tolerance. And just like I talked about, a strong sense of them and us lies in that. George W. Bush, for example, after the September 11 attacks, said you're either with us or against us, fighting terrorist players and the ones who were behind the September 11 attacks. So the idea of the nation as a political unit is a sense of nationalism. Turkey, Iran, and Iraq were against the Kurdish referendum in 2017 because if it was to become a state, it would be politics. And you know that politics is something serious behind in every state associated with the idea of nationalism. So when it comes to the state, when it comes to nationalism and the nation, it's politics. So the nation can be more a political word rather than a social word, because this has to do with international community. We are now living in an interdependent, politically, economically interdependent world, and whatever goes on somewhere in a part of the world will have direct impact to the other parts of the world as well. Some questions that can be raised in here is, what is a nation? Why is the issue of nationalism complicated? How come the nation is created out of modernity? Why is the nation an imagined community? And what constitutes each nation? And there are some videos to watch, like how did nationalism spread to the world. And thank you.